Okay. Well, good morning, everybody in the UK. Good afternoon and evening, everybody in China. And, well, hello, everyone in between. Thank you very much for joining this China-Britain Business Council webinar on demystifying China online, reaching China with your website and cloud applications. We've just got a few more people rolling in at the moment. We've got a good, healthy crowd this morning. Before we begin, I would just like to talk a little bit about who we are at the China-Britain Business Council. The CBBC is the leading organization helping UK companies grow and develop their business with China. CBBC supports companies of all sizes and at every stage of market entry with practical in-market assistance, services, industry initiatives, as well as a membership program offering access, seminars and significant networking. CBBC works closely with the UKTI and the FCO and has a strategic partnership with the British Chamber of Commerce in Beijing, providing corporate members with reciprocal membership. Our business ed board and professional team have extensive first-hand experience of doing business in China, and through 60 years of engagement, CBBC has built up exceptional connections with government and business across China. CBBC services are delivered through a network of 10 offices in the UK and 13 strategic locations across China. CBBC helps companies to network and learn from China-savvy multinationals and SMEs, to understand the intricacies of doing business in China, and to develop sound strategies for expanding in the fast-changing and dynamic marketplace that is modern China. So that's just a little bit of a background about what we do and who we are. Just to give you a sense of where we are around China, we have 13 offices in mainland China. We've just opened up one office in Xi'an and Changsha this year to increase our coverage. So that's pretty much all I want to say about the CBBC this morning. Just to go through a little bit of housekeeping. This is a very interactive platform. We will be asking poll questions and we invite you to ask questions. So if you have some questions, please feel free to drop them in to the area that I'm highlighting now, ask a question or give feedback, and I'll get to them. If they're pertinent to the flow of the presentation, I'll drop them in to Gautam as he speaks along. Otherwise, we'll save it to the Q&A bit at the end, or I'll just pass it on to Gautam afterwards and he can follow up with you because I have all of your details. So, if I could ask you all to click on the little raise your hand button, the one that I'm highlighting here, and this will just make sure that I'm able to see that you can hear basically what I am saying. Yes, if you could just click on that, the little raise your hand. Brilliant. Okay, so I can see that pretty much everybody is raising their hand. Thank you very much. I'm going to drop everybody's hands. If you do have some questions, please drop them in as we go along. All right? Please drop them in as we go along. All right. So, moving along. Our speaker today, Gautam Rishi, is Director of Sales EMEA for CD Networks and is responsible for sales and business development strategy across the region. Before joining CD Networks, Gautam was a Director of Strategic Accounts at 1E, where he managed and maintained key relationships with 1E's largest customers in relation to IT efficiency. Prior to this, he held several key strategic commercial roles at Data Capture Solutions and Empirics. Gautam holds a BSc in Business and IT from De Montfort University in the UK. So I'll just be handing over to Gautam quite shortly. As I said before we begin, this is quite an interactive platform, so we'll be asking lots of poll questions. So I'd like to ask the first poll question. I think regular listeners to our CBBC webinars will be very familiar with this question. So I'm just going to launch a poll, and this will give you an idea of how it all works. If you could just click on where you are based. So click on where you're based and click submit. And we'll drop more and more of these in as we go along. So we're delighted actually to hold this topic. I think online China is one of those incredibly dynamic and interesting places. The internet and how it's approached, how it's interacted with, how commerce is done on the internet is so vital to every company's strategy when they enter China. And performance and speed and managing that online platform is an increasingly difficult thing. And I think there's a whole lot of pitfalls. There's also a whole lot of opportunities, and that's why we're delighted to have Gautam here today. So let me just I'm going to share the results of that with you. So we can see that 4% are in China, 41% UK outside of London, 33% UK London, and 22% other. Quite a lot of others today. So to those people who are other, hello and welcome. I don't know where you are, but we're delighted to have you. Okay, so as we move along, I'm just going to close that now. and we'll hide that. All right, great. What I'm going to do is I'm going to attempt one of the great modern feats of IT, and I'm going to look for Gotham. Gotham, I'm going to turn your microphone on. Are you out there?
Hey, good morning, everyone. Thanks a lot, David.
I breathe a sigh of relief. We have no Houston moment here. So what I'm going to do, Gotham, is I'm just going to hand over control to you right now, and basically away we go. So I'll hand that over to you right now. Okay.
Perfect. Here we go. Right. So with the modern face of technology, we should be up and running, and everyone should be able to see my screen.
If you have any problems, please just type them in.
Perfect. Okay, so good morning, everyone. Thanks a lot for making the time today. Yeah, as David just mentioned there, so I head up the sort of commercial unit here at CD Networks. So yeah, thanks again for joining us today. So really what we wanted to talk about today is the area around demystifying China. This is mainly in relation to web application performance, and effectively what I wanted to cover today in terms of agenda is, well, what is the opportunity in China? So this is in terms of, obviously it's a growing area of conversation. What is the sort of challenges in putting yourself online? That's challenges in terms of sort of the governmental landscape and also the sort of performance landscape. So really want to discuss about sort of latency. There's a lot of talk about the great firewall of China. So some of the conversations around this are sort of very blurred. So here what I'm going to do today is really clean that up and sort of give everyone a better understanding around that. The licensing and regulations around that. Effectively, what I'll also do is talk about what CD networks have been doing, the solutions we've put in place for some of our customers, and then give everyone an idea of actual sort of case studies. So these are people who've gone through the process of looking to deploy their websites in China, some of the challenges they faced, and really how we've worked alongside them and been able to go over that. So just to give everyone an idea of CD Networks and who we are. So what we are is we're a cloud acceleration network. So in essence what that means is we make the internet go faster. So we transform the internet into a secure, high-performing application delivery network. So any customers or users who have applications or web applications anywhere around the world, we effectively make the world a smaller place so you can reach your end users very quickly anywhere in the world. Our focus is on really the challenging markets, especially China. So some of the places where we see this is the emerging markets. And China's a very sort of difficult landscape to navigate, especially in terms of web delivery, and this is really what we're going to talk about today. We have over 140 points of presence spread around the world. So these points of presence are really our sort of physical footprint in terms of data centers where our technology sits. We've spread this over the last sort of 14 years as an organization, really around the world, and where we've seen more web users come up is especially the sort of emerging markets and especially China. In terms of China, we have over 25 points of presence spread across China. As you can see here, here's a list of where we're spread across. And so really we've covered the sort of highly sort of popular density areas of where our end users are and where the basic internet population is. It will have more meaning as we go through this presentation of why these points of presence are placed there and what these points of presence actually do. As I said, we've been, as an organization, we've been actually founded in 2000, but really we have set ourselves up as the experts in China. So we've been in China since 2006. We've had strong and local relationships with the government, the ISP providers, the telcos in China. We've become experts on the firewall, the regulations, licensing, and this mixed in with our sort of technology background around web application really means that in terms of reaching your end users in China, we've got really good experience in this. So we support about over 40,000 web applications in total around the world, and we've seen a huge rise in and customer challenges and requirements around China. So what I want to talk about really now is the opportunity. So everyone's aware of China and the growing amount of internet users here. So what I do is just spend a bit of time to talk about, well, what is this opportunity, and put some numbers behind that. So the fastest growing online activities in China, seen a 33% increase in online banking. So more and more users are becoming web savvy. So again, like we see in the UK, people want to sort of transact over the internet. People don't want to have to sort of leave their house to do certain things and go to sort of physical stores. Online payments is another sort of boom market we're seeing in China. And again, similar to what we see in sort of Western markets, group buying and online shopping are having a huge sort of impact there. So these numbers are very high, especially if we compare these to other sort of regions as well. The 29-30% increase is huge. In terms of sort of microblogging and social media as well, we're seeing huge uptake in this as well.
Gautam, is this a year-on-year increase that you're talking about here?
Yeah, this is a year-on-year increase. So
okay, thanks.
What we've done is we've highlighted the sort of the key growth areas where we're seeing the sort of the biggest increase in demand. So as I said, online shopping and online payments are two of the largest things we're seeing here. So just to put it in context, just so everyone can sort of relate to the opportunity in China, in terms of online shoppers in China, there's 75 million more shoppers online in China than there are in the US, double the amount of online shoppers than in Japan, and then there's 6 times the amount of online shoppers than the UK. So this is an absolutely huge space. These aren't sort of projected numbers. This is the current right now in terms of what we see. So there's this absolutely huge market of people who have access to the internet, access to online shopping, and their expectations have obviously grown with that. They want this sort of fast performing applications. Just to give you an idea of internet users in China and around the world, this is actually predominantly focused on the Asia market. So as you can see here, China has 538 million web users. That's just a huge amount of people who have access to the internet. See, in terms of the rest of the world, there's no one else obviously even close to that. If you look at the sort of population of the total global internet, it's probably around sort of 2.2 billion internet users. Asia almost accounts for half of this, and then obviously China accounts for half of that. So the actual amount of people who have access to the internet in China is no one obviously can get near to that. Obviously in terms of population, India's in second, but if you look at the gap between China and India, again that's somewhere around 400 million web users. An interesting thing is also to look at the sort of penetration rate in terms of that's already a massive number. The average penetration rate, and what we mean by penetration rate is out of the population, how many people have access to the internet. Asia, as an average, has 29% penetration rate, which is quite low. If you look at say another country like South Korea has a sort of 83% penetration rate. Again, to put it in context to Europe, the UK has a sort of 80+% penetration rate as well. If we look at China here, they have a 42% penetration rate. So again, this is still an absolutely growing market. So typically, as you'll see over the next few years, especially with China, that penetration rate will go higher and higher. What sort of backs this up is here's a graph effectively on internet users since 2007. So if we can sort of focus in on sort of 2007 to where we are now, this is actual number of Chinese internet users. I think what you can see is they've been adding about 100 million users per year. So almost double the size of the UK in internet users every year they've been adding. And again, this is sort of shown no sign of slowdown. See, there's that point where it reaches maturity, but they're still a few years away from they're sort of accessing a total amount of internet users. So in terms of online performance challenges, so obviously what I've touched on in the sort of previous few slides is really the opportunity.
I got them. We have a poll question, I think, now to drop in
web
to ask people about their performance questions. Shall I drop that in for you?
Sure. Yeah, absolutely.
So yeah, just going to drop just to give Gotham a sense of who's listening and who's around today. I would just ask a question: do you have website performance issues in China? So I'm just going to launch that. So please, please click on whichever one is most suitable to you. So it's no, we're happy with our performance, yes, but we have a solution in place to fix it, yes, but we're currently looking for a solution, and not sure. Okay, so just give it another couple of seconds where nearly everybody has voted now. So please just click on whichever one is relevant for yourself. I think the answers are pretty clear. All right, I'm going to close that now, and I'm going to share the results. So it's pretty clear. Gotham, are you able to see the results there?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and I think this is actually sort of echoes. So if we actually look at the sort of not sure, that's probably the most common thing we see. So we kind of work with two types of companies really. One is the sort of company that is, we have no idea what our performance is like in China, and we've heard sort of things that it might be slow, but we're not actually 100% sure. Or then you get the other extreme where it's our website's failing in China, our end users can't access our website in China. So you kind of, what we typically see is this sort of extreme, and it's that whole not being aware of that performance issue. And a lot of companies haven't really spent the time to actually dissect this information. So really what this next section about is looking at some of these performance challenges, looking at why the website might be performing slowly. So in terms of performance and speed, it really does count for a lot in the sort of online space. Google have come out themselves and said, and this is actually from Google statistics as well, that if the web search performances, even if it slows down by effectively a tenth of a second, Google loses, it uses searches less than 0.6% less. Yahoo have found a 400 millisecond loss in performance. It decreases traffic by 5 to 9%. The interesting stat from the bottom right-hand corner from Amazon, just even a 100 millisecond delay reduces revenue by 1%. I think one of the sort of big stats we see is, if we can sort of relate to this Bing search result, a 1 second delay in load time led to a 2.8% revenue loss. And that's especially one of the big ones we see. And there's other sort of stats out there as well. So if your website takes longer than 3 seconds to load, there's a 40% abandonment rate. So really the large companies especially, performance is absolutely everything. So even a 1 or 2 second delay, end users just do not stand for that these days. Again, it's a very competitive space out there. If someone's not wanting to on a slow website, they can just go to one of their competitors. Google themselves, again, from a search engine optimization, SEO point of view, they analyze the actual speed of how a company's website is performing. So even as part of their search results, if your website's performing slow, you don't actually appear at the top of their search engine ratings. So what we see is a lot of companies who, they're obviously investing a lot of money into marketing, increasing the brand. If their website's still slow, they're obviously going to miss out on this huge amount of web traffic. So again, performance is absolutely everything. So we speak to a lot of people who are purely just looking to improve the performance, just to improve their Google rankings. Because again, this is something, and again, the Chinese end user, the major search engines out there work in a very similar way. Just to give you an idea, so effectively, without sort of going too technical here, if we look here in the sort of left-hand section of this graph, if you have your data center or your sort of application hosted in the UK, obviously the further your end users are away from that data center, the slower the performance is. Obviously it has to travel over the internet, and And with that, it has to sort of talk back. So if you've got an end user in China, so if they have to access a data center, say located in Europe or say London, they'll have to travel across the internet from China, potentially going through the Chinese firewall as well. And what we typically see is certain websites, for a lot of our customers, their homepage might take sort of 70, 80 seconds to load up. As you can imagine, that's pretty unacceptable. The earlier sort of information I mentioned was 3 seconds and above, you're looking at 40% abandonment rate. And I'm sure from everyone who's probably on this call now, if you have to wait sort of 70, 80 seconds for a website to load, there's probably a good chance you probably still wouldn't be on that website. Even if we look at China, it's obviously a very large landscape. What we mean by backbone latencies is even within China there's huge latencies. So even if you have a data center in China, just going from sort of Beijing to Guangzhou or Hong Kong or anywhere else in China, there's massive latencies. Typically the infrastructure in China is a lot less in terms of they haven't advanced as far as certain other countries in terms of their telco providers, their base levels of infrastructure, their ISPs. So again, some regions are still running on sort of 56K modems, and again, the idea of fiber is still very much yet to be penetrated in China. So even once you get into China, it's a very difficult landscape just because the infrastructure isn't advanced as certain regions, say the UK or the US, or around certain parts of Europe. So we'll start talking a bit about the firewall. I'm sure everyone's heard about the sort of Chinese firewall. Just to put it into context, so someone like Hong Kong is actually outside the firewall. So Hong Kong's obviously not constituted as mainland China. Guangzhou is inside the firewall. So if we look at that from a distance point of view, it's very short, 84 miles. It's a very short distance. So you'd probably think to yourselves, well, that can't really have a huge impact. 84 miles, it's traveling over the internet, that can't have a huge impact. If we touch on the next slide here, we've actually carried out some testing. This is actually using third-party tools. So we've used a series of tools. This one in particular uses a solution called Network Bench. This analyzes the website performance. We've just taken a really small 64 kilobyte object and tested, well, what's the performance of delivering this object from inside the firewall and outside the firewall. To put a 64K object into context, an average web page is about 1.3 megabytes. So this is probably sort of 20 times smaller than an average web page. So it's a very small object. If you can look at this, if we just take a couple of areas, so inside the firewall, that object is taking sort of just above a second to deliver. If you're delivering that from, say, Hong Kong, it's taking 2.5 seconds. So you're kind of adding around 40%. So the firewall actually adds 40% latency. This is a small object. So if you times that number by sort of 20, that's typically what you might see. And obviously there's other factors that go into that as well. But there's a sort of base level. Even from a very small distance, it's not necessarily looking at, well, it's a very short physical distance. Other things have to be taken into consideration, like what actually happens when a web page goes through the firewall, what happens when it has to go to different parts of China. And again, because of the relationships with the ISPs and telcos, sometimes it can be very slow to deliver to different parts of China. I suppose just getting into some of the sort of backing up a few of the points I've mentioned earlier in this webinar. Faster sites just deliver better results. We see huge amounts of revenue increases, huge amounts of traffic increases. So if I can just highlight on this, this is actually one of our customers we work with. So these are a social gaming customer. What this graph actually shows is this is terabytes. This is the amount of terabytes of traffic. So it's quite a large customer who's pushing a lot of traffic. This is actually the customer monitoring their traffic that goes through their website and then users access. And so as you can see in September 2011, probably pushing around 5 terabytes a month. This is typically going all the way along. They didn't go live with, in terms of mainland China delivery until February. So as you can see here, their trajectory is sort of pushing them up to naturally probably getting nearer to 20 terabytes. As soon as they've actually gone live and significantly improved their website performance, you can see they've increased their traffic by almost 4 times in 6 months. So as soon as you have something that's working faster, obviously that increases usage, and it almost has that snowball effect. So this is actually, for our world, this is actually very sort of common to see this type of graph. It's kind of very much a sort of chicken and egg scenario where, well, our applications are seen to be okay, but at the same time they're quite slow. So it's always a case of once that website improves, that's when you actually get the performance increase and traffic increase. And so again, these are sort of huge sort of effects that the performance can have to applications. Here's also a mobile gaming customer. So this is a customer who has effectively downloads of an application that they actually download via iOS and Android applications. But as you can see here, these two graphs, one, the lines that effectively represent, this is the total China traffic, and this is their total traffic, so total traffic from around the world. As you can see, what's happened is from when they've gone live with us from 2012 from March to August, just in a very, very small period of time, they've seen a 13% increase to their traffic in China, 2.5 times increase, and then they've also, that's had a massive effect on their total traffic. So again, before they sort of went live, they've increased their traffic by almost 2.5 times just from increasing their performance. So again, that's very typical in terms of how we see a lot of businesses, that they'll go from sort of very sort of average performance, and when they actually take a look and think, how can we improve this, naturally what happens is a lot more users start using this. And again, it's that snowball effect we'll keep sort of referring to in terms of that performance increase.
Gautam, I have a question here from John. He asks, a lot of the stats that you talked about there were Google and other sort of international websites. I mean, obviously China is very much based on Baidu. Are the same figures correct for search speeds? Are there similar statistics for Baidu?
Yeah, absolutely. So we work with a lot of companies who've worked with Baidu. There's a lot of hotel reservation booking sites, actually. It was a recent project. Works in the exact same context in terms of how they analyze the speeds, how important those speeds are to SEO ratings as well. So yeah, absolutely. So the same thing, what we've talked about Google, absolutely applies to Baidu.
All right, thanks for that.
Okay.
Before we go on, I think we have a poll question.
Effectively, what we've covered. Yes. Okay. Sure.
So we drop in another poll. This one, an odd question, but I think it links in with everything. While we're there, I have a question from Yannick, and Yannick asks, could it be that the latency performance impact of the Great Firewall varies with time? We don't really have consistent results during our tests. Do these variations follow a pattern, or is it quite random?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So obviously, I think Yannick's would probably, I assume it's probably a mature organization, because obviously they've been monitoring the performance of their web application. And that's probably one of the most common things we'll see is, I assume Yannick's organization is delivering from outside the firewall. And so what that means is it'll have to go through the firewall, and then there's also mainland China delivery. So might not necessarily be the firewall that always adds latency. There's typically, it's probably half a second to get through the firewall, and what Yannick's probably seeing is very spiky performance, very inconsistent performance. This is typically down to, in terms of the telco landscape in China, it's split into two main regions, the north and south. The north is run by China Unicom, and the south run by China Telecom. I always get them confused, so it may be the other way around. But effectively, then there's multiple ISPs. So effectively, dependent on congestion, or if that ISP can handle that amount of traffic, or if it's been rerouted to a different way, it's not always going through the optimum route at any given moment in time. So the website might be performing at 5 seconds to load up the homepage, and then suddenly it will spike to 10 seconds or back down to 15 seconds or something along those lines. And that's typically down to the ISPs, the navigating through the different telcos, congestion. The firewall can also sort of get very blocked as well. So there's normally a number of reasons into that. So I hope that answers the question.
All right, thanks for that. You can see the results of how long the Great Wall of China. The correct answer, I'm reliably informed, is 13,170 miles, which is B. So a lot of people need to work on their China geography. Is the moral of the story there? I'll hand back to you there. Good.
Perfect, thanks. Actually, interesting answer. I didn't know I would have gone for the wrong answer as well on that one, if that makes someone feel any better. So I think that the main points on what we've discussed is effectively we've talked a bit about, okay, this is the opportunity. We've touched on some of the technological challenges as well in terms of outside the firewall delivery, inside the firewall delivery, and how that affects latency. Some of the challenges effectively split into two areas. So if we look at it from a technological point of view, okay, there's just a latency effect from delivering from Europe to China. Obviously, there's a large distance in between that. Then there's also the sort of business aspects of this, and this is the licensing aspect. So what I want to do is just for a few slides is really focus on what are the licenses, what's the type of content that people can deliver into China. See, there's lots of talk of this isn't allowed inside China, that isn't allowed. Really what I wanted to do is try and sort of simplify that for a lot of the sort of people on this webinar, just to understand what is allowed, what isn't allowed, and what you do need in terms of licenses. In terms of compliance and what effects this has, as a website application server, you should expect to conform to Chinese regulations to reach Chinese users. So again, if you want to deliver your web application in China and across mainland China, you do have to conform, as you can imagine, to the various Chinese regulations. These are the different licenses. This is the type of content you serve on your website. There's a poll actually that was carried out. This is by the sort of Chinese Academy of Social Sciences, and actually found out that sort of 80%, above 80% believe that internet controls are necessary. 84% believe the government should do it. So again, it's very much a different way of thinking, especially compared to maybe as the UK. It's very much usage and control. It should be sort of less regulated. Obviously, in terms of China, it's very much seen as that it has to be regulated, and the government should do this. So a lot of companies, especially from the sort of UK, should really take that into consideration. And again, just to sort of highlight, do not expect the end users to sort of bypass regulations and blocking techniques. So obviously there's ways potentially around the regulations, but again, users aren't actually sort of wanting to do this. They'd rather go on to websites that actually are licensed, are allowed to be delivered in China. So in terms of the situation, in terms of licenses, there's two types of licenses that are required in China. So one is the ICP Bayan license, and the other is the PSB Bayan license. Both are mandatory for all websites in China. So if you wanted to actually deliver your web content inside mainland China, these two licenses are 100% mandatory. Effectively, the ICP stands for Internet Content Provider License and covers you as an organization to deliver content. There is a process to get this application, to get this license. And then the Bayan license, the PSB Bayan, is effectively around security in the domains for your organization. Again, these are absolutely mandatory, and you must have these in place if you do want to deliver your web applications inside mainland China. Again, in terms of then what content you can deliver, so again, certain types of content in China are absolutely forbidden. So as you can see, in terms of adult gambling, political, anti-government, these are actually completely forbidden. So these will get blocked. Again, certain things that are high on the sort of risk level are religious or user-generated, certain types of news sites. So again, you have to be very careful with, even if you get hold of the licenses and do start delivering inside China, and again, this is even if you're not delivering from inside China, the firewall has the ability to sort of block this. The firewall's a very advanced piece of technology, and lots of sort of people have worked on this, lots of money has been spent on this. So again, it can pick up on sort of high amounts of skin tone and potentially work out that this might be an adult site and it will completely block it. So again,
Gotham, could I ask you just quickly? I mean,
Sure.
you hear a little bit of talk of the firewall. It kind of sounds a bit like the Wizard of Oz or something. Could you give a sense of, in reality, is it chaps in a huge big warehouse looking at computers looking for stuff, or is it online bots that are searching for particular words or all? I mean, I know I'm sounding like an amateur here, but maybe you can explain a little bit more about how it manifests itself.
Yeah, no, absolutely. That's a really good question. And you've pretty much almost answered it yourself there. It's really a combination of both of them. So they've got multiple offices effectively spread across China. Those are sort of physical people, physical bodies, eyeballs, who are constantly looking through websites, looking at things that could potentially be suspicious. And these are just multiple offices and constitutes of thousands of people. So we're not talking 4 or 5 people sat in a room occasionally looking at the website. This is a very sort of mature, sophisticated part of it. So that's a sort of one half of it. The second half is the actual technology itself. So this, I'll touch on it in a second as well. This really sits at a network level. So before anything, ultimately everything has to travel over the internet. That internet has to go through various telcos to get delivered to the end users. So there's certain points of entry into a country. It has to go through a certain telco. So at that sort of router level, it can pick up on blocks. It can work out what to do. So it's kind of two-tiered in effect. So it has to get through the firewall. That firewall technology has lots of inbuilt sort of rule sets built into it, so it can look out for certain keywords that it might think are suspicious, like gambling. It can pick up on the actual sort of content on the screen automatically, so high skin tone colors, really the types of keywords and uses. It can work out where the users are coming from. So it really is an advanced piece of technology, and that mixed in with the sort of people power, it becomes very difficult for people to get through that if the content isn't acceptable.
Thanks for that. I have another question here quickly from Richard, if that's okay. And he says, I know of gambling companies who have Chinese users. How do they get around that forbidden status?
Sure. Yeah, and there are instances of this. So we work with sort of gambling companies in general, but that's more mainly around content around Europe. So there's a lot of obviously users who want to access China, but that's not a service we provide. Effectively, how they get around it is not, I wouldn't say it's fully legal, and how they get around it. So they could potentially split their website up into 5 or 6 different types of websites. So one could be effectively someone just dealing some cards, and then they'll have to go to another website where another hand gets delivered and they're dealing cards, or they can go via sort of underground sort of networks. So again, it's not probably the correct or ethical way of doing it, but there are sort of ways that we've seen companies doing this. But again, what you'll see with some of the main providers, the sort of larger brands, that they generally try and stay well clear of this. That's one area. Sometimes they'll sort of keep changing their website names, so they'll get blocked, but they'll go under a different name. They'll try and make things a bit more sort of inconspicuous. So it does happen, but typically they don't stay online for a huge amount of time. And again, there's other ways for the government to effectively block these. So yes, there are instances of sort of adult or gambling sites there, but typically they're not there for long, and it's very much a big process to continue with that.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks for that. I would say, as for having lived in China for many years, anyone in the foreign community just uses a VPN to zoom around things. That's probably one other way. Anyway, back across to you, Gotham.
Yeah. Sure. So that's effectively the firewall and what's allowed, what's not allowed. In terms of the blocking mechanisms, again, there's multiple ways of blocking. So they can block via the IP, so they can work out where the end users are coming from, the IP addresses. They can effectively take over the DNS. They've got multiple ways of blocking. And from an end user perspective, it just looks like a normal thing that I'm sure people are very familiar with. Server not found, connections timed out. So to the end user side of things, it gets blocked. Again, they have to work with the telcos, the ISPs, so they'll work with these companies and say, okay, if anything comes from this data center location, if anything from this company comes out, it's completely blocked. And that can have a detrimental effect, especially on a large brand. If you haven't correctly followed the licensing procedures and what you think you're doing is okay, but it's not actually okay, that could actually lead to huge sort of, I guess, trouble in terms of getting your licenses back, actually getting the site unblocked. And I've got a slide that covers that. So blocks occur, and again, this is, I guess, touching about David, your sort of earlier question, where do the blocks occur? So it's really at international routers, so 97% are international routers, and then there's another 3% in internal routers. So if it comes through from an international website that's trying to deliver into China, they can work out at the router level, okay, this is allowed, it's not allowed. Then obviously they've got the internal routers which can also work out, okay, this shouldn't be allowed, this has been blocked. There's multiple ways, and then again there's ISP censorship. So anything that gets delivered is effectively controlled by the telco or ISP. So they've got multiple ways. Again, different agencies have different ways of looking at it. So dependent on a certain region, again, certain rules apply in certain provinces. So they might be slightly easier on a certain type of website than other regions. So again, it's all about having consistency at a very high level and making sure you work with someone who can actually give you that advice on, well, what is the type of content we can deliver, what happens if something does happen effectively, and I can sort of talk about that now. Again, typically, blocks can occur due to mistakes from others. So it's not a case of a certain web page has gone up and it could be sort of borderline if this is allowed, not allowed. Again, very also understanding that mistakes happen. Blocks can be subjective. It can be blocking different organizations, different websites, individual basis. These can be temporary as well, so it's not a case of you've been blocked, that's it forever. So the process is remove any of the material that is considered to be sort of not allowed. Talk to your sort of delivery provider or agent, or talk to the ISP. That's typically the best route. Or talk to like I said, talk to the ISP themselves. But again, as you can imagine, from a European perspective, it's very difficult to sort of, well, how do I know what ISP has blocked it? How do I speak to the people there? It's a very long process. So the easiest route is to have a relationship with someone who already has those relationships. So they can understand, okay, where has this been blocked? Pick up the phone, what are the reasons? And then effectively relate that back. So we've worked with some very sort of large sort of FTSE 100 companies, global 500 companies, who've had sort of websites where, again, these are sort of high-end sort of product good websites, and they'll have sort of a picture of someone modeling some perfume. Again, because of skin tone, it's been sort of flagged up as suspicious. But again, what we've done in that instance is that customers come to us and said this is being blocked, and we found out the exact reason to the exact image. We've worked with the sort of regulatory bodies, and we've had that removed, and everything's been fine again. So again, it's not a case of once you're blocked, it's sort of game over. It's really a case of understanding what are the reasons. Sometimes it's kind of a fair cop, and it's kind of, okay, that needs to change, take it down, or it's really educating the various ISP providers. Actually, this is okay content, this is actually allowed, and then they're normally fine with that.
I got a quick question here from Martin. He asked,
sure.
How is HTTPS traffic affected?
Sure. So HTTPS traffic, so effectively there's two types of traffic effectively. There's HTTP and then there's HTTPS traffic. So HTTPS traffic is effectively the encrypted traffic. So effectively, it's affected in the exact same way. So even if it goes via HTTPS, they have the options to unencrypt that as part of what goes on in terms of that actual data center in China. So in terms of how it's affected, it gets looked at the same way, and typically it's very difficult to deliver certain types of HTTPS traffic across China. And there is, again, it faces a slower performance as well. But again, what we typically do is work alongside, I guess, the customers we work with, and we don't have any issues with that because of the way we comply with the various license regulations. Okay, so what I want to touch upon now is really around the licensing. So I've mentioned earlier that there's various types of ICP licenses. So if you go on to a website, I guess a good example, if you go onto the sort of Samsung Chinese website, is one that everyone can do. If you go to the bottom of the website, you'll typically see these ICP registration numbers. It has to be shown on your website. So again, any company in the world who has these licenses, they have to display these on the website at the bottom. It means that it's officially licensed, and these are the license numbers, and they're allowed to trade and deliver inside mainland China. How you get hold of these licenses is what we recommend is hire an expert around the regulations licenses. It's an actual application process, so you have to prepare the licenses. These applications are all in Chinese, so obviously you need to speak and read and write in Chinese to fill in these applications. There's a process of actually going to certain offices. You have to get your picture taken. It's quite a long process. So
Gautam, while we're doing that, we're just going to ask people if they have a revenue-generating business in China, just so you can take your words a little bit more to that. So do you have a revenue-generating business in China? Because this obviously affects your need for the licenses quite a lot. While we're doing that, the questions are coming in thick and fast, actually. I have one here. Can you recommend an agent for license applications? From Keith.
Sure. Yeah. So yeah, we can absolutely recommend agencies for sort of obtaining ICP licenses, and again, understanding what's allowed, what's not allowed. So I guess in short, yes, we absolutely can. But there's normally a slightly bigger picture to also look at, so we can sort of talk and help our customers.
Okay. A comment here from Ray. China Cash claims to be the only truly licensed CDN in China, and they can guarantee consistency on how the government deals with their clients. How fast can CD networks deal with blockages? Same also from Ray.
Sure, yeah. So it's a good question, Ray. Thanks a lot. So effectively, yeah, China Cash are also a company that has, effectively in terms of technology, sort of similar technologies. I would probably put that down to sort of more marketing efforts. I think everyone at some point for any organization will claim to be the fastest and only provider of any service in the world. So again, they're not the only ones. We absolutely also work in that same area. And again, I think China Cash are particularly only focused on China. I think from CD Networks, we're a true sort of global company, so we have infrastructure all over the world as well as mainland China.
All right, great. I have one question here, just one you'd be able to clear up quite quickly. Are these licenses just required for international business, or if you partner with a Chinese business partner, do you still have to be licensed? That's from Paul.
Yeah, sure. So it's quite one of those grey areas. It depends on that partner you're working with. An ICP license is required for every company. So all Chinese companies, only a Chinese company can apply for an ICP license, so you have to have an entity there. So if you're working with a partner, it's sometimes, well, you need to understand, well, are they going to be registering the domain? Are they going to own the domain? Are they going to manage and look after the content? So again, it's a kind of grey area. It kind of has to be looked at in a bit more detail. We have to understand the partner a bit further to really understand that. So I can't give a sort of definitive yes or no really around that.
Okay, fair enough. Anyway, there's the results. Do you have A lot of people either have some issues or are certainly planning to get into the market over the coming 12 months.
Sure. No, yeah, there's good. It's, obviously, that sort of 14% who are exceeding targets. That's always great to see as well. So in terms of licensing, and this kind of touches, and this is probably one of the areas, and we've probably seen this in the last few seconds here as well, we get most of the questions around. So how do we obtain licenses? How do we maintain licenses? What licenses are required? So really, it's a case of work with a local expert, work with a company who knows how to navigate the space. You need to have constant communication with these government bodies as well. So it's not a case of we've got our licenses, we don't ever have to worry about this ever again. It's normally a case of we've got our licenses, how do we maintain that? How are we aware that we're maintaining these correctly? If there's been any changes, how do we make sure we know how to sort of look after that? Again, you need contacts who can constantly sort of monitor this. So if there's about to be a block, you need someone available 24/7 to effectively understand, well, why is the block going in place? Is there anything we can do to remove that? So again, it's not a case of we've got our licenses, it's done. It's a case of get those relationships, maintain it, and again, work with the governing bodies. So again, this can be difficult for obviously organizations, especially based in Europe. So again, it's all about hiring the right people to do this, manage that, and maintain that. Effectively, what CD networks do, what we've done with some of our sort of customers we work with, it's all about, well, we've touched on the opportunity, we've touched on the challenges from a technology point of view, from a licensing point of view. But obviously now it's a case of, well, what do you do about that? How do we overcome those challenges? How do we deliver our content? How do we make sure our websites perform as quickly as possible? So there's a few different options, and this one was touched on now. So typically the one that springs to most people's minds is, okay, well, we have performance issues in China, we'll throw some money at it and we'll put some more data centers there. Again, that's a very complex and expensive solution. So even by putting a data center in one location, it probably means that that's great for that state or province, but again, as you start spreading out, if your end users are dispersed because of the infrastructure, that might be great for that one area, but that probably won't be the solution if you're looking to expand and your end users are all around China. Not to mention, obviously, data centers can be expensive. You have to physically put them out there. But again, it's probably the number one idea that most people have when they're looking into fix a solution. Secondly, it's hardware appliances. So this is putting physical acceleration boxes. So I don't know if people are familiar with F5 or Netscaler. These are typical hardware boxes that you can put. But again, these are very expensive. And again, they're very much sort of orientated around physical offices, not really around dispersed web users. Obviously, web users can come from all over the place rather than one specific location. In terms of traditional content delivery providers, they're great for if you have very static websites. So what I mean by static is it's just lots of images because you can cache images on servers. But if you have very dynamic content, so people having to do searches, people going backwards and forwards to the host origin center, a cacheable solution just will not work. So again, what we mean by dynamic is when you search for something, when you add something to the shopping basket. Again, anything that's sort of very user-orientated, that's classed as we can't cache that. So again, you need something that can sort of dynamically accelerate. So what CD networks have put together is effectively we have our sort of 140 points of presence all over the world, including the sort of 25 inside mainland China. What we effectively do is you have your sort of origin data center here and you have your end users all here. Instead of having to go over the public internet and travel and sort of potentially go through the firewall, we effectively create our own sort of private funnel that goes from your end users to the origin data center. Across this we have various technologies that speed up the performance of these websites. So we allow our customers not to spend any money on hardware, to put in any software. It's really a case of we take care of that. Again, That's the sort of essence of effectively how it works. Our private sort of internet tunnels spread across the globe. How it effectively works, this is some sort of real customer data. What we're seeing here is we're monitoring the same website running in two instances. The green line's running on CD networks, and the sort of orange-ish line is running on the customer's origin data. As you can see, the performance, and again, I think we had a question on this earlier, it's kind of can be very spiky, up and down, very inconsistent. And again, you can see load times of 40, 45 seconds. CNET was almost half this performance because we're using our sort of mainland China delivery. We're creating those sort of advanced tunnels between your data center and the end users. This comes back to effectively there's different providers who can do this, and again I think someone mentioned China Cache earlier as well. What we have is we have this huge global network, which means we have an infrastructure in China, but not only in China, all across the world. So if you're just looking at something just for China, yes, we can absolutely do that, but then obviously most of the people we work with, it's a case of we also have end users in South America, in the Middle East, across the US, across various parts of Europe. So we kind of need a solution that can help us globally. So really from a delivery point of view, that's kind of where we've kind of built this nice sort of area for us, is this sort of global delivery provider, which also helps in sort of mainland China. I'll just finish on a few sort of case studies now, and I'll be sort of finished from this side of things. Really a couple of useful case studies. So one of the customers we've worked along with over the last few years is Saxo Bank. So they're a Forex trading company, one of the leading investment Forex trading companies as well, based out of Copenhagen. They have a Forex trading application called Saxo Trader. As you can imagine, anyone who's trading in Forex, this is very dynamic content. So the price of foreign exchange is changing almost every second. So if people can't complete those trades very quickly, they just become failed transactions. Effectively, Saxo Bank, this dynamic application in China, every transaction was a failed transaction. Their website was taking sort of 15 seconds, 16 seconds to load up, which actually led to these guys losing millions almost per day. So I think the numbers were above $1 million per day in lost revenue from China. As you can see, and again it touches on those points, it's that very inconsistent, spiky performance. What we've done is now this runs on CD networks. Again, what you can see is this very sort of flat line, quick performance. And the only reason this can happen is because of these 25 points of presence we have in China and our sort of dynamic acceleration. So really a combination of is the main point of how we've helped this customer. And you can see here one of Ashley Latham's measurement, we're the only solution provider to meet their needs. It's a case of the dynamic acceleration of infrastructure in China. SEMI is serving microelectronics manufacturing. But again, as you can see, the yellow is representing their current network and the blues represent the CD networks. So we've taken their performance down from 20 seconds down to 9 seconds with 0 errors. Again, what we've done is we've reduced their costs because they've actually been able to remove data centers from China, and we've cut their download times in half. So again, from our side of things, there's no need to invest in any additional infrastructure because we absolutely have that. We have those sort of government relationships as well. So we can actually help you with we help our customers with the licensing around how to get the licensing. Some licensing we can actually provide as part of the technology, but again, it's on a sort of dependent basis on what type of content it is, etc. Finally, this is a company actually based out of London, Thompson's Online Benefits, so they're a HR system for benefits. So they support some very large customers, and they have end users all across China. Their situation was because it's a HR system, it's very dynamic content that can't be cached. So if someone wants to log in and see how many days holiday they've got left or how many stocks they might have in a company or anything specific to that user, they have to log in. What was happening was these end users from China, they were unable to log into the system. So as you can see here, the performance results, the green lines are effectively what they were doing by themselves, and when they switched on CD networks, you can see that the sort of very small blue line. So we've kind of taken their website in Hong Kong was taking 7 seconds. We took it down to 1. But if you can see here in Shanghai, just by going through the firewall, their website was taking somewhere close to 80 seconds to make these calls. We took these down to sort of 1.5 seconds. So they've again been able to reduce costs by reducing some data centers. So we've simplified things. So as you can, again, anytime highly personalized content needs to be delivered from central data centers, or even cloud to remote location, latency could be an issue. CD networks is the best solution for accelerating our cloud applications, dynamic content to global users, including mainland China. So again, this is very typical in terms of what we see. So finally, just from this side of things, in terms of how to sort of summarize the kind of do's and don'ts about this, so do absolutely work with a trusted organization. So again, a lot of you work with the China Business British Council here. Do that planning, work with your advisors there. Do work with a global provider of content delivery. So again, make sure there's a larger scale. Again, most IT teams are looking at a global solution. So a company that might only have infrastructure in one certain part of the world, that's probably not the best solution. It's really looking at it from a global point of view. Be aware of all the sort of regulations around doing business in China. Make sure you can work with a company who can give you advice on that, understand what companies to work with. Again, in terms of translation, work to get this translated. So we work with sort of partner companies who are really sort of specialized in translation, looking at not only how to change the messaging, but how it works for that market. Chinese end users actually consume information in a different way to sort of say UK users. We're very much quick looking at a website. We want to get the information as quickly as possible and do what we need to do. Chinese end users, for example, they actually absorb a lot more content. They'll stay on a web page for 5 to 6 times longer than an actual UK user. So the way information is consumed, the way information is displayed, have a good understanding of this. Again, don't forget speed matters. And so even if you do all those things great, you can have this great, brilliant looking website. Make sure that it obviously performs quickly. Make sure it doesn't get blocked. Understand how to market in China. Understand how social media works. Understand how their trends are increasing. Again, they're very much different to what we'll see in the sort of West. Understand that customer services function in China. Again, we've seen this in the press a lot, where Chinese end users are obviously feeling that they're not getting the same level of quality as certain sort of Western customers are getting. So again, these sorts of things are completely unacceptable. Again, don't just assume if you have websites and they'll just increase in conversions. You have to look at this as a very strategic. Really get an understanding of what your website performance is in China. Where are you starting from? Lots of customers don't even understand they have an issue in China. But if they actually start looking at, well, what is our performance, they learn very quickly, yes, we've made an overall decision. We want to increase our business, increase our revenues in China, but what are we doing about it? It's not sort of naturally going to grow. And again, what we've seen with Chinese, they prefer multiple pay options. They prefer different ways of paying, rather than obviously we've got very used to sort of paying via debit or credit card. There's a much wider options out there, and hence coming back to the top, online payments is just a huge growth area in China. So in terms of that, I hope everyone's sort of been able to gather a lot of information around China, the opportunity, the challenges, the internet landscape. If you go to our website, there's some sort of further information, especially around the licensing. So there's a FAQ on the BAM licensing. There's a few more case studies, a lot more information. One thing we do sort of suggest doing is, from our side of things, if anyone wants to sort of get in contact, we're happy to sort of carry out some tests to say this is the performance of your website now. So we use third-party tools, so we can actually give you a high-level overview of your website's taking 3 seconds to load in the UK, but 50 seconds in China. So feel free to reach out to us, and we'll help you sort of carry out a test and show you what your performance is like. I think that's it from me. So David, I don't know if there's any more
got them.
questions.
Yeah, there's a few more questions. I'm conscious we've gone over the hour, but I think
Yeah.
there's a couple of good questions that would be relevant to everybody. One question here from Wei Jiang: is ICP required for mobile app requiring connection to offshore backend?
Yeah, so again, almost looking at mobile is looking at mobile the same way you'd look at a normal internet site. So if it's effectively delivered over the internet to an end user in China, it requires an ICP license.
Okay, fair enough. I have a question here from Alan. Let me just scroll down and find it. Yes, we currently host our web app on Amazon Cloud, which obviously doesn't extend over China. How would CD Networks add value to our service? And do you have any examples of that? Thanks.
Yeah, sure. So obviously Amazon's a very popular service for multiple reasons. So typically Amazon uses a service EC2 for application hosting. So we actually partner with Amazon, and we've actually sort of located a lot of our sort of points of presence near that. So effectively we would just sit on top of Amazon. So we would absolutely accelerate. So in terms of, so probably maybe even close to 20% of our customer base have that set up. So we would just sort of pull content from there and deliver that into mainland China. So really not changing the way you work and just increasing the benefits.
All right, thanks for that. I've had a couple of questions actually about live streaming in China. Does it have the same issues, and does your facility help it in there, or do you help it in the same kind of way? Perhaps you could talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, so again, I think live streaming is always one of those sort of grey areas. Yes, we have helped customers, and we do help customers with that, but it is very much dependent on the type of content, the type of technology that sits on. It's very much, I guess, without asking lots more questions, it's difficult to answer, but it's certainly something we do, and it's certainly something we help a lot of companies do. So again, there's sort of 5 or 6 questions more we'd need to understand to sort of further help them.
Okay, well, one question that might be an interesting one is how can CD Network improve the delivery of HTTP live streaming in China with an ingest point outside of China?
Sure. So I guess going into that, so effectively how we would do it, and again it comes onto the sort of live stream, so that's a bit more detail as well that helps us. So effectively, if you have, we can have multiple ingest points as well. So depending on where, if let's say if that's coming from Hong Kong, again we can help that from deliver to our sort of points of presence in China and then deliver it down to the end user. So we have quite a few different technologies and different solutions. So we're in on that side of things. Again, we do this for multiple customers. We've been doing this for the last 7 or 8 years. So it's probably something we can help out with, but probably needs a bit more information.
All right, fair enough. A question from Andrew here. Considering, it just disappeared, excuse me. Considering the poor net infrastructure, modems, etc., should China sites be more simple? Less videos, less graphics, more text, etc.?
So yeah, it's a good, definitely a good question. It's definitely a good one to sort of discuss. I guess it comes down to sort of catch-22 again here. One school of thought is make the website more simple, less image, less complexities, and it will perform quicker. Therefore, you'll get more end users, and hopefully that will increase to more revenue. The other school of thought is also websites, Chinese end users particularly, they're after the same things that the particular Western end users are after. So it's more information, more marketing type things, more review type situations. So really, my attitude is I don't think there should be a compromise in this is for our China site, so therefore we need to make this really simple and not as good as our Western websites. Again, it's typically a case of if you have the ability to deliver quickly, we can. So we're supporting some very complex web applications in China who've made zero compromise on their website. So my suggestion is not to simplify and don't compromise, and again, look for a solution that can help you.
All right, thank you for that. I think we might call it a day there. I have a few more questions that I will just pass on. Some of them are quite specific, and some of them are quite technical. So, Gautam, if maybe you want to do a wrap up from your side, and then maybe we'll just close up from our side.
Sure, sure. Yeah, so thanks everyone for taking the time to listen around sort of the challenges in China. So I guess to sort of summarize from our side of things is China's a very difficult landscape. I think that's how we sort of started this. From an infrastructure point of view, from a technology point of view. So really look to understand that. But again, don't see it as a minefield. We've helped certain customers really come from one day of not having a clue of the landscape, and within probably 1 week, they're delivering all their content in China, and traffic's increased by 10 times. So again, it's really understanding that. So I'd like to leave it on that note, and again, I'll pass back to David, but if anyone has any sort of questions, yeah, feel free to sort of get in contact, and yeah, we'll be happy to assist. And yeah, obviously from a testing point of view, always happy to sort of show people their performance with some tests.
Sure, and if you did type in a question and I didn't get to it today, then I will pass it on to Gautam and his colleagues. Just to go through a few bits and pieces from our side, if you like our webinars, we put them all onto our website at cbbc.org. If you just scroll down what we do, you'll find a section called Webinars. There you can register for upcoming sessions, and CD Networks will be giving us another presentation on e-commerce on the 23rd of October, so there'll be much more to learn from them next month. So you'll find information about that at upcoming webinars, and all our past webinars and linked to previous recordings will be a link to this one and the PDF. And actually, there's also one on social business in China and online presence, so website design and some of the issues that have come up in the questions. So if you've got a colleague or friend who you think should have seen this, or you didn't catch it all first time round, this and all previous webinars can be found on our website. And also, we have just opened up our YouTube page, our CBBC YouTube channel. So there you can also find pretty much all of our webinars and lots of other China-related issues about China business. So that's really it from me. Some upcoming events here with the CBBC. Tomorrow we have the Shanghai Design Promotion Centre in London. On Monday we have a business clinic in Exeter. Tuesday in Hull. And next week we have the Governor of Guangdong, Mr. Zhu Xiaodan, a pretty key and senior person from the Chinese government, will be having a business dinner with CBBC members. And the one that I would draw your attention to, if you're new to China business or if you're a small company looking to learn more, on the 17th of October we have our SME China Forum, and that will be in Manchester. But you'll find all information for that at our website. So from me, really, that's thank you very much to Gautam, CD Networks today. If you have any feedback or suggestions, please feel free to contact me. That could be suggestions about what you learned today, things you'd like us to follow up with, or indeed potentially some other topics that you'd like us to see covered on our CBBC webinar platform. Other than that, I would say thank you very much for your time, and I wish you all the best success in your China business. Thanks very much, and goodbye.